All right, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about something called biophilic web design, and it's a pretty big idea. It's all about tackling one of the biggest issues we all face online, that feeling of digital burnout. The core concept? Making our websites feel more human by making them feel a whole lot more like nature.
Woof, that's a pretty bold statement, isn't it? But if we're being honest with ourselves, it's often true. You know the feeling. You land on a site and it just feels sterile, confusing, maybe even a little bit hostile. It demands all of your attention, but gives absolutely nothing back to your well-being.
And you know what? This isn't some accident. It's actually a direct result of how we've been building the web for decades. We've been so focused on this idea of cold, hard efficiency that we've accidentally built digital spaces that work against our own biology. And that leads directly to fatigue, frustration, and burnout.
I want you to think about it this way. For pretty much 99.9% of human history, our home, our office, our entire world was the natural world. Our brains literally evolved to find patterns, to find comfort, and to find information in things like trees and water and open skies, not in rigid digital boxes on a screen.
And this slide really nails the huge disconnect we're talking about. On one side, you have the digital world we've built, this kind of fortress of right angles and sterile grids. And on the other, you have the world our brains are actually hardwired to thrive in, organic, flowing, complex. I mean, they couldn't be more different from each other.
Now, that might sound a little dramatic, but there is a really deep truth to it. All these unnatural design choices, they increase what's called our cognitive load. That's just the mental effort it takes to use a website. They're quietly wearing us down, and that's exactly why we often feel so drained after spending hours online.
So, okay, if the problem is a design philosophy that completely ignores our nature, then the solution has to be one that embraces it. And this isn't just some new trend, by the way. This is actually about returning to a really fundamental scientific principle. And that brings us to this, the biophilia hypothesis. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. It's the idea that our connection to nature isn't just a preference, like liking a certain color. It's a deep-seated biological need, just like our need for food or for community. And this idea is the key we can use to start building much better digital worlds.
And let's be super clear about one thing. We are not just talking about superficial decoration here. You know, just putting a picture of a leaf on your homepage and calling it a day. That's just greenwashing. Real biophilic design is a deep, functional discipline. It's about strategically engineering an online space that actually mimics the restorative patterns of nature.
So how do we actually do this? Well, to put it into practice, we can break it all down into a really practical framework. Let's take a look at the 3 core pillars that designers use to translate the patterns of nature into code and pixels. These 3 pillars work together to create what you could almost call the DNA of biophilic UX. First up, you've got direct experience. That means incorporating real, tangible bits of nature. Then you have indirect experience, which is all about evoking the feeling of nature through more abstract things. And finally, the spatial response, which focuses on building a digital space that feels safe and clear. Let's break those down.
Okay, so the first pillar, direct experience, is the most straightforward one. It's about using real, unmistakable elements like light, water, or plants. But, and this is important, authenticity is everything. We're not talking about cheesy stock photos. We're talking about subtle gradients that suggest the time of day, or maybe a beautiful high-res video of a river that makes the whole page feel alive. Now, pillar 2 is where the real artistry comes in. This is all about evoking the feeling of nature. You know, there's a saying that nature abhors a straight line, yet our websites are full of them. So using things like rounded corners, flowing curves, and even subtle textures that feel like paper or stone, that can make a digital space feel so much more tactile, more real, and way more welcoming.
All right, pillar 3 is the most advanced and is fascinating. It treats your website like a physical place, using a concept from architecture called prospect and refuge. So prospect means giving your users a clear view of where they can go, like a really well-structured navigation bar. And refuge is about giving them a safe, uncluttered space to observe from. Think of a clean article page with tons of white space that lets them just focus on the text without any distractions. Okay, theory is great, but what does this actually look like out in the wild? Let's take a look at how some of the biggest brands in the world are already using these exact principles to create these incredible user experiences. The Calm app is, it's the perfect example of a digital sanctuary. It uses Pillar 1,
direct experience, with those gorgeous full-screen videos of natural scenes. And the super minimalist interface? That provides an incredibly powerful sense of refuge, making the whole experience feel meditative and safe. When you think of Patagonia, you think of authenticity. Their hero is always real, rugged photography, a direct experience of wild nature. And this isn't just decoration, right? It's a powerful statement that reinforces their entire brand identity. It tells you exactly who they are. Apple's approach is way more subtle. You won't see a lot of nature photos on their site, but they are absolute masters of Pillar 3. Their incredible use of white space creates this extreme sense of refuge, which forces you to focus. And those rounded corners on literally everything they make, hardware, software, that makes powerful technology feel soft, approachable, and, well, organic.
So why should your boss or your client or even your CFO care about any of this? Because biophilic design is not just about making things look pretty. It's a real competitive advantage with a direct, measurable impact on the bottom line.
It all comes down to a psychological concept called cognitive fluency. All that means is how easy is something for our brains to process. When a website is fluent, when it's easy on our brain, we don't just enjoy it more, we instinctively trust it more. So biophilic design is a powerful tool to lower that mental effort for your users. And that fluency leads to real business results. When you lower that cognitive load, people don't get as frustrated, and they're less likely to leave. That means lower bounce rates. A calm, focused user is way more likely to convert. And an authentic, natural-feeling design builds deep trust and brand loyalty. It's a really clear business case for building a more human-centered web.
This quote really just sums it all up, doesn't it? For years, we've been digital bricklayers, just assembling websites from pre-made grids and boxes. But the future belongs to the digital architects. The ones who can create spaces that aren't just functional, but are actually restorative and deeply intuitive. See, biophilia isn't a style. It's more like a return to form. It's just an acknowledgement of the million-year-old operating system that's running inside all of our heads. So, you have the science, you have the tools. The only real question left is, what are you going to build?